The NHL is filled with parity. Teams who were once at the top of the league can fall in the standings nearly overnight. The New York Rangers are one of the biggest victims of this type of downfall. This season, the Rangers have been anything but predictable. Following their President's Trophy run last year, expectations remained high for this Original Six franchise. However, a season filled with championship aspirations has become more dramatic than we could have ever anticipated. This year, discussing the Rangers has become a common trend, but not in the ways that you would have hoped if you're a fan of this franchise. The team is collapsing from the inside, and marquee players both old and new have been shipped out of town in the blink of an eye. The Rangers at the time of this recording are 15-15-1, 500 on the season, and 3-7-0 in their last 10 games. Their slow start doesn't feel like a simple slump. It's a symptom of a deeper, more systematic issue. Years of flawed drafting, questionable decisions, and a failure to develop young talent have left the Rangers teetering on the brink of falling apart. Well, again, let's talk about the New York Rangers and the latest headlines surrounding the team, as well as the players that have been moved on from, and if this situation is fixable for the team or one small step back away from a total disaster. Oh boy, we're talking about the New York Rangers again, and I can't believe they made another trade like this, but here we are. The New York Rangers are in the headlines once again, but in all of the wrong ways. The other day, they decided to trade another one of their assets, but not one that the fans had wanted or felt was a necessary move in any way. So in case you missed it, the Rangers traded Kappokakko to the Seattle Kraken, and we'll get into the trade details and who I think really won in that trade in a few moments. But the Rangers season just continues to plummet and plummet as the team reaches 500 for what feels like the first time in like 5 years, or at least since like 2022 maybe, when they started bringing in those veteran guys to take over. I know that the Rangers were in a rebuild at one point, but this sort of direction that they've taken, it's very confusing and almost sudden based on how well the team was performing over the past couple of seasons. So today, let's talk about the Rangers some more, see if this trade with Kappokakko was worth it for the team, and if fans are happy with the move after a bit of a disappointing run that he had with New York. So before we get into this video, if you guys are enjoying the content, about 90% of the people watching have not subscribed yet. I have a sub goal of about 20,000 that I would love to reach by the end of the year. So if you guys want to continue supporting me and the content that I create, go ahead and hit that like button now, subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Without further ado, let's talk about the New York Rangers again. Trading Kappokakko, the team's former second overall pick back in 2019, is an overall symbol of the Rangers' failures. First, let's talk about the full deal. Kappokakko was traded to the Seattle Kraken for Will Borgen, a 2025 third-round pick, and a 2025 fifth-round pick. For New York, this is just a completely unnecessary trade at this time. Borgen is a borderline NHL player who's 28 years old and only has 3 points in 33 games played this year. The picks being in the third and the fifth round will likely not turn into anything, making not only their draft selection a bust from 2019, but this deal underwhelming. For Seattle, this is actually a pretty great move for the team. They are in no man's land, and acquiring a player for practically nothing who's only 24 years old with a lot of potential upside could prove to be useful for them as they continue to retool. Now you might be asking yourself, why did this trade even happen? Well, leading up, Kakko was playing rather well. He had 14 points in 33 games played, averaging around 13 minutes of ice time. And personally, watching any Rangers game, I felt like their third line was their best asset. Now, this is nothing crazy numbers-wise, but compared to his 19 points in 63 games played last year, it felt like a step in the right direction. Now, Kakko hasn't been the worst player for the Rangers this year offensively or defensively, but yet was still listed as a healthy scratch against the Nashville Predators the other night. Leading up to the game, he let his discontent be known with the team, addressing the media with a few quotes. First quote, "I haven't been on the ice too much when opponents score a goal. I have not been the worst guy, but that was me out of the lineup." Kakko then responded with a second quote saying that, "Yeah, I was surprised I was out of the lineup. I know you got to do something as a coach when you're losing games, but I think it's easy to pick on the young guy and boot him out. That's how I feel, to be honest." The reporters then asked him if he was going to address it with the coaches and management to see what he could improve on, and he said he wasn't even going to go there and that it was up to them to come to him to explain what was happening here. Now let's just address the entire kappokakko era in New York since it's over. Now I think both sides are to blame. For one, I don't think that kappokakko has played up at all to the expectations that were set for him at the draft, and I feel like he could have done a lot more with the situations that he was given. But at the same time, before you start freaking out, I do feel like the Rangers organization should be taking the brunt of the blame here, because I don't think that they put him in a position to succeed. And I think that their development team has proven to us throughout history that they're not exactly the best in the NHL. They were gifted the first overall pick with Alexis Lafreniere, and he is just now finally turning into a player that is somewhat respectable based on his draft position. And I'm actually a big fan of Alexis Lafreniere, but I feel like if he was in a different organization, he would have already been about a 90-point scorer at this point, just with some of the opportunities he wasn't given early on in his career. And the same goes for Kappokakko. He was constantly demoted to the third or fourth line and was never really given a real chance to succeed. So let's talk a little bit more about the organizational flaws here and why this entire experiment failed in the first place. Now, like we just briefly talked about, the Rangers were gifted an opportunity to have a quick rebuild. But since taking both Kakko and Lafreniere, their reluctant decisions have really stunted the development of both of these players. I talked about it a little bit, but I feel like Lafreniere and Kakko should be way further in their development. Look at other players around the league. Jack Hughes, for example, who was taken one spot ahead of Kakko. You might not remember, but at the time, people were discussing Kappokakko being taken over Jack Hughes. And now Jack Hughes has already become ultimately around a 100-point scorer, whereas Kappokakko has barely cracked the 40-point mark in his career, and I think he's only done it one time. This just shows you that there's an organizational flaw here, with a team like the Devils continuing to draft amazing players and develop them into superstars, whereas the New York Rangers, they can't buy themselves a good first-round draft pick and have to make trades in order to round out their lineup. Now let's just talk about how this trade actually impacts the Rangers this year, and it does nothing but negatively hurt this team. You get nothing back from Kakko when he was playing pretty well, and you maybe could have gotten more around the deadline if you really felt like you had to trade him. He wasn't making a lot of money on your books, so it wasn't impacting you that way. And you now lose a quality third liner and get nothing in return. This just feels like the worst time to make this trade, and it only suggests that there was some kind of rift between him, the coaching staff, management, whatever it might have been. For management and the coaching staff, it's your responsibility to develop these young players and keep the relationship solid. And no matter what coach they bring in, there always seems to be some dysfunction between the young guys on this team and whoever is running the locker room. I feel like this is just a disaster move, and it continues to show that the Rangers really have no idea what they're doing at the moment, which has led to a lot of dysfunction and a big reason why the locker room synergy has just been off all season long. The lack of a clear approach, whether it's commitment to speed, puck possession, physicality, whatever you might come up with, the Rangers just don't have one right now. They lack identity on the ice, and it hurts them in nearly every game they play. So what needs to change? If you ask the fan base, I'm sure they just want a complete overhaul of the organization. But I feel like the one thing you really need to focus on and review is your scouting and player development department. They need to identify and attract drafting and development talent that's capable of fostering a culture of growth and improvement, and implement a clear, data-driven approach to player development. They need to figure out how to foster an environment where players are given chances to succeed and build confidence early on. And overall, they just need to adjust their strategies according to individual needs, rather than trying to find quick fixes in other areas like free agency. Alright, so long-term vision. You traded away one of your future players. Alexis Lafreniere is basically one of the only younger guys that you have that you can confidently say is going to be a legitimate player right now. I don't know where the Rangers go from here. Fans are not happy with some of their superstars like Zibanejad, Kreider, and it really seems like the only veteran guy on the team that they're pretty chill with is Panarin based on his numbers. But I don't know what you do if you're the Rangers. You clearly thought that this was going to be your year to win a cup, and all of the trades that you've made have been more asset dumps than anything else. So are the Rangers going to go out and make a big trade to get a star player at the deadline if they're around 500 and out of the playoffs? I don't see that happening. I just don't. They don't have a lot of assets in terms of like they're going to get like the first overall pick again. That's not going to happen. So what does the future look like? You're going to have to continue building around Alexis Lafreniere. Obviously, all of these guys are locked down, so this is going to be your core unless you can find somebody to make a deal with. And most likely, like your Trouba trade and like the Kakko trade, you're probably going to lose out in those trades too based on the performances of players like Zibanejad and Kreider. So might as well keep them, because I think eventually they're going to start picking up their play again. But you need to figure out something to change this locker room, because a 500 team based on the talent you have here, it's just not good enough, especially since you just paid your goaltender the largest contract in history for a goalie. So overall, what do you guys think about the New York Rangers? Did you think that this Kappokakko trade was good or necessary in any way? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, where you think the Rangers are going to finish this year and what the future looks like, and also just like one thing you would want to change about this organization right now. Thank you guys as always for watching the videos. Make sure you like this one and subscribe to the channel for more content. I will see you guys in the next episode.